It was Lance Corporal Eric Ayon's last mission. And the reason I know is because he told me that morning while he was cutting my hair. Lance Corporal Eric Ayon was an attachment from Motor T, Headquarters and Services Platoon. His occupational specialty was basically a mechanic. There were so many other Marines that weren't infantry that were attached onto our unit. And even though infantry is the tip of the spear, the other military occupational specialties are the ones that support us so that we can reach out and touch the enemy with extreme violence. And in 2004, it seemed like it was more dangerous to be what we call a personnel other than grunt. The people that brought us our mail, the people that brought us our food, the combat engineers, they all put their lives in danger just so we could patrol. They were in gunfights. They lost their life in explosions. So when I meet someone from the Marine Corps, even if they're not the MOS of 0311, which is the number for infantry, I still have the utmost respect for them because I've seen what they do in combat so that the infantry can do their job. We even had cooks who were passionate about making sure the infantry got fed. And Lance Corporal Ayon was a Motor T guy that was passionate about making sure our vehicles were ready and that he safely could drop us off at our patrol points. So again, this was, I want to say it was April 9th. Yeah, I want to say it was April 9th because the day before was April 8th. There's a famous picture of Lance Corporal Ayon restarting a vehicle, a Humvee that was riddled with AK fire. 3rd Platoon had got ambushed on Gibson and Nova in an old school Humvee, what we call a Tin Man. And the only survivor from that attack was my senior Marine and my close friend, Deshaun Ote. Ote and I used to travel up to Sacramento because we wanted to be rappers back in the day. And we would talk about everything on that 9-hour trip that we would make in 5 hours, going 120, 130 on the 5. But the day before, Ote and his team, his squad, had approached Gibson and Nova, and they were ambushed by RPGs and small arms fire. And Ote was the only one that made it out of that attack alive. April was a hell of a month for us. Starting on April 6th, where 1st Platoon was ambushed and we took casualties. Of the casualties was a very special junior Marine named Lance Corporal Marcus Cherry, who loved the Marine Corps. I used to tell him, bro, you bleed olive drab and camouflage. That's your blood type. I remember Cherry would walk and call out cadence, left, right, your right, like he was marching in boot camp. He loved when the older Marines hazed him or made fun of him because he just loved the brotherhood. There was even a time when he asked me an honest question: how come I can't just get along with my senior Marines? And it was a convicting moment because Cherry didn't have the chip on his shoulder and ego that I had. He just had pure love for the Corps. Another death that happened on April 6th was Benjamin Carmen. I had gone through School of Infantry with Benjamin Carmen. I had seen Carmen just love life. Carmen was the type of guy when we came from out of town in the United States and took the bus back to on base. If he was tired, he would fall asleep and rest his head on a stranger's shoulder. Funniest thing to me, because I had never seen anything like that before. Carmen loved to do this rave beatbox sound. And me and Veray, my roommate Ramel Veray, sometimes we used to call him a space cadet, but we knew that Benjamin Carmen was just a pure soul. So losing them on April 6th, it took a toll on me and the rest of the platoon. We were out for blood. Remember, after April 6th, April 7th, the unit decided to patrol the Sophia area, playing Hell's Bells by AC/DC, calling the men cowards, and begging them to come out and fight us. April 8th is when the attack happened with 3rd Platoon. My platoon was QRF, the Quick Reaction Force. And when we responded to the attack, we saw the vehicle. We picked up the dead bodies. Corporal Apple was hysterical at the time and he was yelling. And I remember telling him to calm down because he's our leader. I remember telling him, me and Texador, we told him, bro, you can't lose your shit. You're our leader. You're supposed to keep it together. And there was Lance Corporal Ayon, April 8th, restarting the Humvee, or trying the best to restart the Humvee. There's a famous picture of him trying to restart the Humvee where he's behind the glass and the glass has multiple bullet holes. The windshield has multiple bullet holes through it. And through those bullet holes, you see Lance Corporal Ayon behind the driver's wheel. So April 9th, we planned a huge operation, again, trying to root out the insurgents that were embedded in Ramadi. And before we went out, we had to make sure our shaves were good and that our haircuts were done. So Lance Corporal Ayon was cutting my hair. And he told me, yeah, man, this is my last operation. I'm going to go back to Junction City for 2 weeks. Then I'll be stateside. And I said, man, that's amazing. What are you going to do when you get back? He told me he was going to do something with at-risk youth because he really wanted to work and counsel them and make sure that they had a good life. And then we kept on talked about hip hop, talked about growing up in California. Then we got ready for the operation. Lance Corporal Ayon was driving the 7-ton that took my squad out to the intersection of Gibson and Nova, the same intersection that had received the ambush the day before. We had an attachment from weapons company, or from weapons platoon rather, Donald Lindsay, Lance Corporal, I believe Donald was his first name, Lance Corporal Lindsay, who was in what we call the turret of the 7-ton, which is like, for those of you listening, it's a circular sunroof that someone sits on top of with a medium to heavy machine gun, so that if a 7-ton gets attacked with small arms fire, the guy in the turret can return fire from the top of the main cab of the 7-ton, and then the infantry that is in the cargo part of the 7-ton can return fire from where they are. So out the gates we went. Lance Corporal Ayon driving, Lance Corporal Lindsay manning the machine gun in the turret, and my squad in the back of the 7-ton. And we hung a left at the main supply route, Road, Michigan. And instead of turning left on Gibson to go up to Nova, we passed Gibson along MSR, Michigan. And then we turned left at a landmark called the Arches. And we took Nova, which runs up and intersects with Gibson. And as we approached Gibson, Lance Corporal Ayon stopped the 7-ton, and the Marines from 1st Platoon, the squad that I was in, we dismounted the 7-ton. And this is the same area that I got blown up a few weeks earlier, where Talinda and Contreras self-detonated the IED, and we pushed out. Again, there was nobody on the streets, so we knew that this was going to be a difficult day. No children celebrating, no people selling anything in the marketplace, just silence. As Marines were told to take cover when we dismounted the 7-ton, and we were waiting for word from our platoon commander and our platoon sergeant on what to do next. And it seemed like we waited forever. And when I say forever, of course, I'm exaggerating, but that's what it felt like to a 19-year-old kid. It was hot. We're talking the month of April. And I got hungry. And I said, man, I got to go back to the 7-ton to get some food off the 7-ton, because we usually carried what we call MREs, meals ready to eat, a little plastic bag that had high calorie meals for military members to eat. High calorie meals that would constipate you for a week. As I started walking towards the 7-ton, I remember Texador, my buddy Jose Texador, looking at me and laughing, saying something like, man, Tor, you always hungry. So we're on Gibson and Nova. I'm walking on Gibson. As Gibson intersects with Nova, the road slightly raises. Nova is elevated above Gibson, so you have to walk up a slight incline to get to Nova from Gibson. And as I'm walking up to the 7-ton, a rocket-propelled grenade gets fired at the 7-ton. Lance Corporal Lindsay was sitting on top of the main cab of the 7-ton in the turret, and he collapsed into the cab of the turret. Lance Corporal Ayon, the driver, jumped out of the truck, and he and I locked eyes, and the look he had in his eyes was a look of, did you see that? I remember looking in his eyes and hearing the sound of another RPG getting fired. And as that RPG got fired, he turned his head and looked to his right, and the RPG hit the front of the 7-ton, and the shrapnel from the RPG and the 7-ton hit him in the head. And I remember seeing blood shoot out the back of his head and a little bit out the side of his head, hit my boots and my uniform, and then seeing him collapse. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move at all. And I didn't want to believe what I just saw. It felt like it wasn't real. It felt like it was some type of Hollywood movie effect or cartoon effect. And from the shock, I blanked out. And when I came to my senses, I was pushed off the side of the road in an area that we call the mechanics area, off the side of Gibson. Our naval corpsman, Doc Trin Dennis, was smoking and cursing, and he had blood on him. And that's how Lance Corporal Ayon died. The rest of the day is a blur to me. I remember the depth. I don't remember the rest of the day. When we got back to base, I don't even remember what I did when I got back to base. It's been years. And in 2013 or 2014 or around then, or it could have been 2015, my squad did an interview, a YouTube interview, and the interviewers were able to find the picture of Lance Corporal Ayon when he was trying to restart the Humvee from the day before he died. They blew up the picture, put it in black and white, and they gave it to me. I took the picture home, and the next day when I saw the picture, I started sobbing like a baby. I was married at the time, and my wife, she had never seen me cry. She didn't know how to handle it. I had always tried to be the strong, silent type, but I just could not stop crying. I could not stop crying. I took a shower, I was crying. I sat in the back of the door in our room, and I wept uncontrollably. And she didn't know what to do. So she called Lindsay's wife, who she was friends with. And Lindsay got on the phone and we talked. And Lindsay, he prayed for me. We got off the phone. I spent the rest of the day crying, just thinking about the picture. So I'm going to go ahead and end the story there. As you can tell from these episodes, every week, every month got progressively worse on our combat deployment. And I don't want anybody's pity from this story, but I just think it's so interesting. I tried to leave a situation in Sacramento to where I was not doing so well, living a street life, fighting, shooting up people's houses, people shooting up my house. And I found myself in a situation that was much worse. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and end the story here, guys. This is Ramadi Days, episode 4. I don't know what I'm gonna title this, but the next time we talk, we're gonna talk about April 10th, the gunfight. We're gonna talk about having to move my friend out of a deadly situation. Thank you for tuning in. This is another episode of Ramadi Days. I'm Theophilus Tor. Goodbye.